Now let's knit the back piece, which is divided into the body, underarm and shoulder parts. We'll knit them in order from bottom to top. First, let's start with the body section. Let's take a look at the chart. In the chart, one vertical line represents a knit stitch, to make the chart look less crowded. The empty squares also represent knit stitches. Since this piece is worked back and forth, the wrong side needs to be worked with the opposite stitch. Now please watch me demonstrate the specific knitting method. First, we'll cast on. We'll use circular needles for knitting. Let me first introduce it to you. These two straight needles are connected in the middle. It's very convenient to knit. First, make a slip knot with the yarn. Leave a slightly longer yarn tail underneath, which is convenient for weaving in the end later. Pick up the straight needle on the circular needle side with your left hand. Insert into the loop. Gently tighten it. This is the first stitch. Pick up the yarn tail with your right hand. Place your index finger above the yarn tail. Wrap the yarn clockwise. There's now a loop on your finger. Slip this loop onto the left needle. Gently tighten. This is the backward loop cast on. Continue wrapping the yarn. Slip the loop onto the left needle. Gently tighten. Including the starting loop, there are now 3 stitches. Continue casting on downward. The stitch count I'm demonstrating here for the swatch is random. Please refer to the pattern chart for the stitch count corresponding to your size. Pay attention not to pull the yarn tail too tight. It's okay if it's slightly loose. After completing the required number of stitches, we can see, this is the effect after finishing the cast on. Note that the cast on does not count as a row. Next, we'll work on row 1. Hold the right needle in your right hand like a pencil. Wrap the yarn tail around your right pinky once. Lightly pinch the yarn with your ring finger and middle finger. Place this yarn between your index finger and middle finger. This is the basic posture for holding knitting needles. This row serves as the right side of the piece. The chart is read from right to left. The first row in the chart shows vertical symbols, which represent knit stitches. Place the right needle above the yarn. Insert it from top to bottom. Insert the right needle into the first loop on the left needle. Pay attention, you're inserting into the loop. Use your right index finger to guide the yarn. Yarn over. Pull the yarn through. Release the loop from the left needle. This is the first stitch. There's a braid-like texture underneath, which is the knit stitch texture. While crocheting, be mindful of the distance between the 2 needles and don't pull them too far apart, to prevent the transition strand in the middle from becoming too long, which causes an uneven texture. Continue knitting the second stitch. Insert the right needle downwards into the loop on the left needle. Yarn over. Draw the yarn through. Release the loop from the left needle. The second knit stitch is now completed. Continue with the third stitch. Insert the needle downwards into the loop. Yarn over. Pull through. Release the loop. The third stitch is now completed. Knit each stitch one by one across the row until all loops on the left needle are knitted. This indicates the end of the row. Follow this method to finish the entire row. During the crocheting process, make sure the loops don't slip off. Don't pull the distance between the two straight needles too far. If a loop accidentally slips off the left needle during the process, you can use the yarn tail between the two needles. Wrap a loop clockwise around the middle. Then place this loop onto the left needle. So the loop is back on the straight needle. Continue crocheting as usual. If the last stitch loop is too big, gently tighten the starting yarn tail. You can see. This is the effect after completing the first row. Now, let's move on to work row 2. According to the chart, this row starts from left to right. Since the chart shows the texture on the right side of the piece, you actually need to work the opposite stitch. Turn the piece over and move it to your left hand. Hang the yarn on the right hand. Start with the first stitch. This stitch is marked as a knit stitch symbol. We will work a purl stitch instead. Place the yarn over the top of the right needle. Insert the right needle upward into the loop on the left needle. Yarn over and pull the thread through. Release the loop on the left needle. One purl stitch is now completed. You can see here that it's a tile texture, with a yarn strand lying across the front of the loops. Continue by working another stitch. Insert the needle upward into the loop. Yarn over. Draw through. Release the loop from the left needle. Another purl stitch is now completed. All the symbols in this row are for knit stitches, but you will purl them all. Keep working until the end of the row. After completion of the last stitch, the second row is now completed. Proceed to work row 3. This row is worked on the right side. The chart starts from right to left. The technique is the same as row 1. Turn the work over. Switch to the left hand. Hold the yarn properly on the right hand. Remember, when knitting, the yarn should be underneath the right needle. Work each stitch one by one as knit. Once done, row 3 is completed. Continue working forward. The remaining part follows the method of the first 2 rows. Work back and forth. You can also refer to the texture. For a braid-like texture, work in knit stitch. For a tile-like texture, work in purl stitch. During the process, remember to check the stitch count. When working back and forth, always turn the work before starting the next row. Here, I'll show you a way to count rows using this swatch. Hold the piece with the right side facing you. The starting tail of the cast-on is on the left side. You can see these little braid-like ridges in the fabric. Start counting from the braid right above the cast-on. Each braid represents 1 row. We can count how many braids are in this column. My swatch has 10 braids here, which means 10 rows have been worked. That's how you count rows. After you finish knitting 10 rows, the size should be more or less fixed. You can now check and compare the dimensions with the front piece. From one side edge to the other side edge. Matching up the beginning and ending edges with the back piece. If the sizes are close enough, then it's fine. If the tension is too loose or tight, adjust your hand tension, or switch to a different needle size and rework. During the crocheting process, you may encounter a situation where the yarn is not long enough. Here, I will use my swatch to show you the method for joining yarn. Leave about 10 centimeters of tail on each end. Then, on the wrong side of the fabric, position it close to the fabric and tie a simple knot. Place both the knot and the yarn tails on the wrong side of the piece. Leave the yarn tails for now. And continue crocheting downward. This is the method for joining yarn. Pay attention when you're down to the last few rows. In order to match the front piece's dimensions, you need to knit and check the height of the side seam at the same time. Then adjust the row count up or down based on your actual progress. Note that the total row count must be an even number, meaning you should finish on the wrong side. That concludes the explanation for the body section crocheting. Next, we'll crochet the underarm, which involves binding off and decreasing stitches on both sides. The new stitch techniques used here are Pt2 tog and SPO. Now, let me demonstrate the specific method. Start with row 1. This row is worked on the right side. Here, I'll continue using this small swatch to demonstrate the method. First, to bind off stitches at the beginning of both sides. Start by knitting 2 stitches. After completing, use the left needle to pick up the previous stitch and cover the next stitch. Then slip it off the right needle. So 1 stitch is bound off. Continue knitting 1 stitch according to the texture. Use the left needle to pick up the previous stitch. and cover the next stitch. Another stitch is bound off. Repeat the same method, and refer to the chart for your specific size. Bind off the corresponding number of stitches. I'm binding off 6 stitches here on my swatch. At this point, 2 stitches have already been bound off. After completing, we can see a loop is remained on the right needle. Which is the loop for the next stitch? We can see on the right side of the braid below this loop, there are 6 columns of braids. Meaning 6 stitches have been bound off. When you're binding off stitches, remember to check the stitch count. Don't bind off too many stitches. I won't repeat this later on. Continue knitting until you have 6 loops left at the end. Notice that I'm binding off 6 stitches at both the beginning and ending here. For other stitch counts, just bind off the required number, and reserve the corresponding number of loops. When you reach the corresponding position, continue downward and bind off the remaining stitches, using the bind off method. Start by knitting 2 stitches. Bind off 1 stitch. Continue binding off the rest. After finishing, carry the yarn across at the end. First, stretch the last loop on the right needle. Remove the needle. Then pull the yarn ball through the loop. Gently tighten the yarn. That completes the first row. Please check the stitch count. Next, work on the second row. Hang the yarn properly on your right hand. Directly pick up the loop from the left needle and knee.t. This row is worked in purl. After finishing the first stitch, pull the yarn. to make its length even with the bind-off edge. Continue knitting purl stitches downward. After completion of the last one stitch, the second row is now completed. Next, work on the third row. This row requires decreasing stitches. Start by knitting 2 knit stitches. The herringbone symbol is shown in the chart below, which indicates to knit 2 stitches together on the right side. From now on I'll call it as a K2 tog. Insert the right needle from left to right. Go through both loops at the same time. And knit 1 stitch. The K2 tog is now completed. We can see the texture below. The left loop is on top of the right loop. Continue knitting all the way to the position with 4 stitches remaining. You've reached the corresponding position. Below is a slanting symbol pointing the other way, which indicates to slip 1 knit twice, knit next stitch and pass slipped stitch over on the right side. From now on I'll call it as a SPO. Insert the right needle in a knit stitch manner first. Slip 1 stitch from the left needle without knitting. Then knit 1 stitch. Next, use the left needle to lift the slipped stitch over the left stitch and slip it off. One SPO is now completed. You can see the right loop is sitting on top of the left loop. There are still 2 stitches remaining. Continue knitting downwards. The third row is now done. Proceed to knit the fourth row. This row consists entirely of purl stitches. Simply complete this row as instructed. After that, knit the fifth row. Using the same method as the third row, first, knit 2 stitches. Then, knit 1 K2 tog. Right needle goes through both loops, from left to right, and knit 1 stitch. The K2 tog is completed. Continue knitting accordingly until you reach the position with 4 loops remaining. Once you reach the corresponding position, knit 1 SPO. Insert the right needle to slip 1 stitch from the left needle without knitting. Then knit 1 stitch. Use the left needle to pick up the slipped stitch and pass it over the knit stitch. 1 SPO is completed. Continue knitting the remaining stitches. This completes the 5th round. The following section requires decreases at the corresponding beginning and ending positions. Some rows are worked even without increases or decreases. The method is the same as before. After completing the decreasing section, continue working the stocking stitch pattern even without increases or decreases. Please refer to the chart and continue crocheting. Similarly, when working the even section without increasing or decreasing, you should match it up with the front piece as you go. It should correspond to about 2-3 rows before the end of the shoulder shaping. You can also adjust based on the row count, where increases or decreases were made on the body. When counting rows during the crocheting process, start from the decrease row, where the texture of the decrease is visible, meaning these overlapping loops on both sides. Count the loops upward starting from this row. Then add the initial 2 rows. This will give you the total number of rows. Note that the last row also ends on the wrong side. Up to this point, the underarm is explained. Next, we will crochet the shoulder parts. There are left and right sides here. First, continue from the previous yarn tail to crochet one side of the shoulder parts. After completing one side, rejoin the yarn to crochet the other side. During the process of crocheting a single shoulder part section, decreases are needed, and some rows require short rows to shape the shoulder slope. Please watch my demonstration for the specific crocheting method. First, crochet row 1. Here I will demonstrate using a swatch. This row is crocheted on the right side. Continue from the previous yarn tail. First, crochet the corresponding number of knit stitches. The stitch count varies for different sizes. Please refer to the chart for details. After completing that, crochet 1 spo. Then crochet 2 more knit stitches. Leave the remaining stitches unworked. Then turn the piece. Crochet rows 2 to 3 downward. On row 3, you need to decrease at the corresponding positions. When working on the wrong side, simply purl without increasing or decreasing. Please follow the chart and complete these 2 rows. After completing that, crochet row 4. Some sizes start short rows from this row. Some sizes start short rows on the last few rows. When you're working on a size with row counts that don't match mine, you can learn the method first, then follow the chart to crochet. The method is the same. This row is worked on the wrong side. Start by purling until there are 5 loops left on the left needle. Once you reach the corresponding position, leave the remaining loops unworked. That completes row 4. Continue to crochet row 5. Begin by making a double stitch. This is the knit stitch texture. Place the yarn over the needle. Then in the purl stitch style, slip the first stitch from left to right without knitting. Then pull the yarn tight towards the back, so that a knot with 2 loops forms on the right needle. This is a slip stitch with a knot. Please follow the chart. Until the last stitch is finished. The 5th round is done. One short row is now completed. For children's style, only one short row is needed. Some sizes require 2 short rows. Next, I'll demonstrate the short row crochet again. I'll use this small sample for the demonstration. First, purl the corresponding number of stitches on the wrong side until there are 4 loops remaining. Before the position of the last slip knot. Once completed, turn the piece and knit the next row. Start knitting with a slip knot. Bring the yarn to the top of the needle. Then, slip the first stitch on the left needle as if to purl, without knitting it. Gently pull the yarn tight. And the slip stitch with a knot is done. Please follow the corresponding chart for knitting. Once completed, another short row is finished. You can see there are 2 slip stitches with knots. No short rows needed behind, just continue knitting normally. Here I'll switch back to my earlier sample swatch to demonstrate the next row after the short row. This row is worked on the wrong side. Start by purling as usual until right before the double stitch. Once you reach the corresponding position, pick up the knot of the 2 loops. And purl 1 stitch. Then continue purling onwards. When you encounter a double stitch going forward, simply insert into both loops of the slip stitch. And purl 1 stitch. Continue knitting the remaining part. After finishing the last stitch, row 6 in the size S is now completed. For other sizes, just continue knitting following the chart. After finishing the last row, you need to bind off. Here I'll demonstrate the method. The bind-off method is the same as before at the underarm, so I won't go into detail. When there is 1 loop left, simply stretch the loop. Then reserve a length of yarn that's 3/4 times the length of the shoulder part. You can also leave it a bit longer. Cut the yarn. Thread the tail through the loop from the inside. And gently tighten it. This completes the bind off. And one side of the shoulder part is done. Next, crochet the other side of the shoulder part, and symmetrical to the previous shoulder part. Before crocheting, first cut a piece of yarn tail and thread it into a yarn needle. I've already prepared that here. Thread the corresponding number of loops in the middle. With a yarn tail, please refer to the pattern chart for the exact stitch count. Thread the needle from right to left through the loops one by one. Once threaded, make a slip knot with the yarn tail. These threaded loops will be used for crocheting the neckline later. Now let's start working row 1. This row is worked on the right side of the piece. First, join the yarn. Make a slip knot with the yarn tail. With the right side of the fabric facing you. Insert the right needle into the loop on the left needle. Place the slip knot onto the knitting needle. Pick it up. Release the loop from the left needle. Adjust the size of the slip knot. Make sure the knot doesn't show on the right side. The first stitch is completed. Continue to work knit. And K2 tog. Please refer to the chart for exact positioning. Once done, row 1 is completed. For row 2, simply purl the corresponding stitches. Once done, proceed to row 3. Start short rows for size S from this row. Some sizes have short rows in the last few rows. If your row count doesn't match mine, learn the method first. Continue with knit and K2 tog. Please refer to the chart until you reach the position with 5 loops remaining. Leave the remaining loops unworked after finishing. Row 3 is completed. Continue to row 4. Start knitting with a slip knot. This is the purl stitch texture. Bring the yarn to the front of the needle. In the purl stitch manner. Slip the first stitch from front to back without knitting. Then pull the yarn tight towards the back. This creates a knot with 2 loops on the right needle. That completes the slip stitch with a knot. Continue with purl stitches as before. The yarn tail is now at the bottom. Bring it up to the front for knitting. Row 4 is completed. Now one short row is done. Some sizes require 2 short rows. Same as before, I'll demonstrate the short row again. Same as before, I'll use this swatch for the demonstration. The next row is worked on the right side. First, refer to the chart and knit until you reach the position that's 4 loops away from the slip stitch with a knot. When you reach the corresponding position, leave the remaining stitches unworked, then turn the work. Purl 1 stitch. Same as before, start with the slip stitch with a knot. The yarn is on top of the hook. From bottom to top, purl the next stitch. Slip the first stitch without knitting. Gently pull the yarn tight. Then purl the corresponding stitch. The second short row is completed. You can see there are 2 slip stitches with knots. I'll switch back to the previous swatch. To demonstrate how to knit the remaining rows, please refer to the chart first. When you encounter a slip knot, slip the corresponding 2 loops and knit 1 stitch. For the other sizes, when you encounter a slip stitch with a knot, just knit 1 stitch using this method. Continue knitting the remaining stitches in knit stitch. After completing this part, continue knitting the remaining section downward until the last row is done. Please refer to the chart for details. The method is simple, so I won't demonstrate further. Bind off with a final row after finishing. Once done, leave a tail about 3 to 4 times the length of this area. The other side of the shoulder part is also explained. Up to this point, the back piece is now explained. Next, proceed to sewing together. First, let's sew the shoulders. I'll demonstrate the method using a swatch with the whip stitch technique. Match up the shoulders of the front and back pieces. Both right sides should be facing outward. Then thread the reserved yarn tail from the back piece into the sewing needle. Insert the needle into the picked up stitched braid on the back piece. Insert the needle into the stitch and braid of the chain on the front piece. Proceed with sewing. First, insert the needle into the corresponding position on the edge. Pull the yarn through. To make it secure, sew through the same position again. Then go left. And insert the needle from front to back. Through the corresponding positions of the front and back pieces to sew them together. Always insert the needle from front to back. This sewing method is called the whip stitch technique. Match and sew downwards. Because the stitch counts for the front and back pieces are not evenly matched in some sizes, you'll need to make adjustments during sewing. Next, I'll demonstrate the adjustment method. In my swatch here, the front piece has more stitches. First, count the chains of the back piece's bound off edge and the chains of the front piece. Then, on the side with more stitches and the side with fewer stitches. Sew once. At the front loop of the first stitch. This adjusts one stitch. Continue sewing using this method, mindful that the adjustments are made in the middle position, not at the beginning and ending. First and last stitches at the edges should match up. Sew to the edge, and for extra security, sew once more. Then weave in the ends. You can weave in a few more stitches. One side of shoulders is now sewn together. Sew the other side the same way. That's how to sew the shoulders. Next, move on to sewing the body. I'll continue demonstrating with this small sample. Place both the front and back pieces with the right sides facing out. And fold them together with the wrong sides facing each other. The stitch counts of the front and back pieces here don't match up one by one. For better appearance, we can start by marking a few key points and secure them with thread. If you have stitch markers at home, you can use them to secure the pieces. Start by securing the beginning and end. When you come to a turning chain, pick up the third chain from the edge and insert the hook into both strands to secure. For the middle area, roughly mark a few points. First, roughly align the fabric. In order to make it flat, you can secure the other side using the same method. This completes the securing. After securing is done, pick up the yarn from the back piece. For easier viewing, I'll demonstrate with a different color. Take a length of yarn that's 3/4 times the length of the sewing area. Insert the yarn into the needle. Let's start by sewing one side. Use whip stitch method also. Here the edge of the back piece has individual braids. When sewing, pick up the half loop on the upper part of the edge braid, meaning the half loop, closer to the inner side of the right side fabric. And insert the needle. To sew, pick up the stitches and chains along the side edge of the front piece and sew them together. Through the half loops on the inner side. Start sewing from the edge inward. To make it easier to adjust the stitch count, you can count in advance how many stitches differ in this area. For the back piece, simply count the number of braids. After counting, follow the method used for adjusting the shoulders. Evenly adjust the stitch count at the middle position. This means on the side with more stitches, so an extra time on the first stitch, before the side with fewer stitches. The yarn tail used for securing the edge can be removed. When encountering a beginning chain, pick up one strand from the third chain stitch and one strand from the chain stitch at the edge. Insert the needle. Leave a little yarn tail. Note that sewing twice on the first stitch makes it more secure. Match and sew accordingly. During the sewing process, you can place the yarn tail on top. Hide it as you sew. Leave the starting tail in its original position first. When sewing, please make sure to keep the row of chains next to the back piece intact. After sewing one section, the securing thread can be removed. Continue downward using the same method to finish sewing the remaining parts. Edge position is sewn once more, for security. Finally, weave the tail into the fabric. The method for hiding the yarn is the same as for the shoulders. I won't demonstrate this part. This completes the sewing on one side of the body. Sew the other side using the same method. I won't repeat the demonstration. That concludes the explanation of sewing. Now continue crocheting the neckline. First, crochet the edging in the shoulder area of the front piece. Then pick up stitches. Crochet in rounds along the shoulder parts and shoulders area. The new stitch technique used is Pt2. Please watch my demonstration. First, do the edging. Here I'll still use the small size as an example. Take the corresponding color yarn. Make a slip knot. Position the front piece facing you. Then start at the right shoulder edge. Pick up one stitch. From the top edge of the row, pick up the entire stitch, and join the yarn. Then make one chain stitch to begin. Work 2 single crochets in the same position. Remember to weave in the yarn. Continue after completing. Pick one stitch from the edge of each double crochet row separately. Work 2 single crochets in each stitch across the row. When reaching a 2-chain hole, pick up the hole and work 2 single crochets. Work single crochets into each adjacent stitch position accordingly. Continue working single crochets correspondingly into the following stitches. After completing, move down to the joining position. Pick up one edge stitch, and work 1 single crochet. When reaching the position of motif 2, the edge of this swatch is made of single crochets. Pick up one edge stitch, and work 1 single crochet. Later, when reaching the edge of a double crochet row, work 2 single crochets correspondingly. At the starting position of the motif, pick up the center chain space, and work 1 single crochet. Continue working 2 single crochets at the edge of a double crochet row. Working 1 single crochet at the edge of a single crochet row. Moving downward to the position between the 2 motifs. Pick a relatively centered position here. And work 1 single crochet. This position is also considered as the center. Moving down to the other side, crochet the corresponding number of single crochets, using the same method as the previous side. You can also refer to the chart for details. After finishing the last row of edges, there's no need to break the yarn. Let's check if the fabric around the edging part lies flat. If it's not lying flat, you can add or skip a few stitches based on the actual situation. Pay attention to keeping the stitch count identical on both sides of the center. This completes the edging. Now we'll start picking up stitches. First, carry the yarn across the previous loops. Stretch it out. Pull the yarn ball through from the inside. Gently tighten it. Continue knitting with straight needles. Pick up a straight needle first. Hang the yarn on the right hand at the sewing position of the front and back pieces. Pick up 1-2 threads. Yarn over. Pull through. This creates one picked up stitch. You can see that the edges are made up of individual braids when looking at the back piece position. Pick up the strand on the inner side of the adjacent chain. Insert the needle. Yarn over. Pull through. This creates another picked up stitch. Continue downward. Pick up the inner strand of the left side chain loop. Yarn over. Pull through. Continue downward with the same method, working to the position of the previously bound off loops. Make sure the column of loops on the side remains intact. Continue working. Transfer the loops onto another straight needle. If there are many stitches, you can spread them across 2 needles. Pull out the yarn with the knot. Then proceed with knitting. Knit each stitch accordingly. If there are many stitches on the first needle, you can continue knitting with the next needle. After finishing the knitting, starting from the braid where the yarn was joined at the shoulder part. Continue picking up the braid along the edge. On the fabric side, picking up 1 stitch per braid position. After picking up all stitches, if there are large gaps here, you can pick up 1-2 strands of yarn below. And pick up 1 stitch. Continue picking up stitches downward. After picking up the last row, move downward to the joining position. Pick up 1-2 strands. And pick up 1 stitch. When reaching the front piece edging position, pick up the stitch from the strand on the fabric side. Pick up 1 stitch per stitch position. After completing, we should check the stitch count. The total stitches must be a multiple of 4 plus 3. If the stitch count doesn't match, you can adjust the stitch count in the front piece, according to the actual situation. Finally, distribute all the stitches evenly across 3 straight needles. This completes the picking up stitches. Note that this picked up row doesn't count as the first round. Now start the first round. You'll need to knit 2x2 ribbing, decrease at the center of the neckline at the same time. First, on the left side of the yarn tail, pick up a loop to the left. Knit 2 stitches. The first stitch where the needles meet here. Knit a bit tighter. Once done, the next symbol in the chart is a horizontal line, which indicates a purl stitch. Purl 2 stitches. Then knit 2 stitches. Pay attention when switching from purl to knit stitches. The yarn needs to be dropped down. Continue with 2 purl stitches afterward. Continue knitting with 2 knit stitches and 2 purl stitches alternately. This stitch pattern is called 2x2 ribbing. Note that, when switching from purl to knit, remember to yarn over before knitting. To avoid adding extra stitches, repeat this process. Keep knitting until you reach the position where there's one purl stitch remaining before the 2 purl stitches, at the centered part of the front piece's indented area. Knit that last purl stitch. When moving downward, just before reaching the center of the recessed area. On the 3 stitches on the left side, we'll work Pt2. To make it convenient for knitting, first transfer the loops onto the left needle. Here, insert the right needle from left to right, and slip the first 2 stitches on the left needle, without knitting them. Then knit 1 knit stitch. After completing that, use the left needle to pick up the 2 slipped loops from earlier. Lift them over the left stitch and slip them off. This completes the Pt2. This stitch is equivalent to decreasing 2 stitches on both sides. Knit 1 purl stitch downward. Then follow with 2 knit stitches, alternating with 2 purl stitches. Knit until the last 2 purl stitches. Continue downward to the starting position of this round. Afterward, you can refer to the shoulder position for identification. The shoulder position above the finished edging area is the ending position of each round. The side starting from the back piece is the beginning position of each round. At this point, the first round is completed. Then proceed to knit the second round. First, follow the chart or texture to knit the 2x2 ribbing, and keep knitting until you reach the position 1 stitch before the decrease in the previous round. Mindful of the position where the straight needles meet each round, knit a bit tighter there. You've reached the position where you need to knit one stitch. The following sections for some sizes do not require decreasing stitches. Simply follow the chart or texture to knit as instructed. Some sizes require decreases. Here I'll use a swatch to demonstrate the decrease method again. To make knitting more convenient. First, move the loops from the right needle to the left needle. Then, use the right needle to slip the next 2 stitches from left to right without knitting. Knit the next stitch on the back as a knit stitch. After completing it, pick up the 2 unknitted loops and lift them over the left stitch, and slip them off. One Pt2 is completed. Continue following the chart or texture afterwards. Knit the last 2 stitches. Round 2 is completed. Continue crocheting in rounds afterwards. When decreasing in the following rows, always pick up 1 corresponding stitch and 1 stitch on each side. Above where the previous decrease was made. After completing the decreases, refer to the chart or texture for the remaining stitch patterns. Just knit 2 by 2 ribbing for the remaining stitches. When counting rounds, you can count the number of chains. The first chain here is where you picked up the stitch. Start counting from the chain above. The loop on the needle counts as 1 round. Adding them gives the total number of rounds. You can also count upwards starting from the first chain. Then subtract the chain used for picking up the stitch. The method is simple. Please follow the chart. Knit the corresponding number of rounds. Then bind off after completing. Here, I'm demonstrating with a small swatch. Even though there are fewer rounds, I'm still using bind-off method. But during the process, some stitch positions need to be combined. The beginning is a 2-stitch knit texture, so start by knitting 2 stitches. Then bind off 1 stitch, followed by 2 purl stitches. This part needs to be combined. Bring the yarn over the top of the hook. Then go through both loops on the left needle at the same time. And knit 1 purl stitch. Then bind off 1 stitch. Next is the knit stitch texture. Knit 1 corresponding 1 stitch. And bind off. For purl stitch texture, they need to be combined to 1. Insert into both loops on the left needle. Knit 1 purl stitch. Then bind off. For the knit stitch texture, continue knitting normally and bind off. For the purl stitch texture, combine into 1 stitch first then bind off. When you reach the previous decrease position, knit and bind off. Continue with this method, keep binding off downwards. After finishing the last stitch, leave a longer yarn tail. Cut it off. Thread through the loop. Pull it tight. This completes the bind off. Please check if the neckline is flat. If it's not flat, adjust the stitch count as needed, and reknit. Note the total stitches must be a multiple of 4 plus 3. Weave in the yarn after done. Thread the yarn into the sewing needle. There will be a small gap at the beginning and ending position. Pick a nearby spot and sew 1-2 times. Hide the yarn to the wrong side. Weave in following the texture. You can weave in a few more stitches. Trim the remaining yarn tail. That's all for the neckline knitting explanation. Next, knit the cuffs. Dividing for left and right cuffs. The left and right here are distinguished by the actual wearing direction. The knitting method is the same. Only the starting position is slightly different. You need to start by crocheting 1 row around the cuff of the front piece. Then pick up stitches to knit. I'll first explain the method for the left cuff. I'll continue using this small sample for demonstration. Hold the front piece facing you. Then locate the right side of the body at this moment. Pick up 1-2 strands. From the side edge, insert the hook to join the yarn. Make 1 chain as your beginning chain. Work down along the edge of the double crochet row, correspondingly make 2 single crochets. If the hole here is too big, you can pick up 1-2 strands from the edge to crochet. When you meet the edge of a single crochet row, correspondingly make 1 single crochet. For edge of the double crochet row, make 2 single crochets. For the position to start the motif, pick up the center and make 1 single crochet. Follow this pattern to crochet single crochets. Skip the joining position. Pick up stitches and chain 1 position. Work 1 single crochet into each stitch. For the 2 chain space, work 1 single crochet. Skip the connection position. Next, work single crochets correspondingly into each chain space and stitch. Evenly make 1 single crochet into every 2 chain space as well. Skip all the connection positions. Follow this pattern. Continue to crochet single crochets downward. When reaching the shoulders, similarly, work 2 single crochets correspondingly along the edge of the double crochet row. Once completed, the edging part is done. Similarly, check if the fabric is flat. Do not cut the yarn after completing. Pull the yarn ball through the loop. Next, start picking up stitches from the back piece position. Method is the same as for the neckline. The edges are all braids. Pick the strand close to the right side of the braid. Pick up 1 stitch at the position of 1 braid. Pick up 1 stitch at the sewing position. For the position where you carry the yarn, first pick up 2 strands and pick up 1 stitch to prevent holes forming here. At the bind off position, pick the braid. Pick up 1 stitch from 1 braid. Here, the yarn tails of carrying are staggered up and down. Hide them inside the fabric. At the sewing position, pick 2 strands. Pick up 1 stitch. The following is the position for the cuff edging. Similarly, pick up the front loop of each stitch, which is the strand closest to the right side of the fabric, and pick up stitches evenly corresponding one by one. After finishing, please check your stitch count. Also, the total stitches here must be a multiple of 4. That's all for the explanation of picking up stitches. Work in 2x2 ribbing. No decreases needed. The ending position of each round is right above where the edging ends. After completing the corresponding rounds, bind off using the same method as for the neckline. That is, for knit texture, 1 stitch corresponds to 1 stitch knitting and bind off. And for purl texture, combine into 1 stitch and bind off. After finishing, check if the fabric lays flat as well, then adjust according to the actual situation. Finally, sew across the gap 1 to 2 times, then weave in the ends. That's all for explaining the left cuff's crochet method. The method for the right cuff is the same. The edging starts from the shoulder of the front piece. Then go down and work single crochets, following the same pattern as the left cuff. After completing, pick up stitches starting from the underarm bind-off point. Then work rounds of 2x2 ribbing. The starting position for the cuff on this side is right under the arm. After finishing, bind off and weave in the ends. That's all for the explanation on how to knit the cuff section. Finally, work on the hem. There's no need to crochet the edging here. Pick up stitches directly at corresponding positions on front and back pieces. At front Pt2, we pick up 1 stitch for every stitch and chain space. Skip the motif connection points. When reaching the side, pick up 2 strands from the edge. Pick up 2 stitches for every row of double crochet. At the body connection point, pick up 1 stitch. Pick up 2 strands. Between the crossed V-shaped loops on the back piece, 1 stitch corresponding to 1 stitch. Also pick up stitches next to the connection point here. Check the stitch count after finishing. The total stitches should be a multiple of 4. The picking up of stitches is done. Continue crocheting the 2x2 ribbing in rounds. After finishing the corresponding rounds, bind off. Simply bind off 1 stitch for 1 stitch. There is no need to decrease at the purl stitch positions. Please continue knitting the hem until it's finished. That concludes the explanation of the hem section. Finally, I'll use this small swatch to show you the method for weaving in ends on the back piece. Thread the yarn tail into the needle. Then weave in the yarn along the tile texture. You can weave in for several more stitches. Then trim any remaining tails. Continue using the same method. Weave the remaining yarn tails into the fabric of the back piece. Now the entire making process of this vest is completely explained. If you have any questions during the process, don't hesitate to reach us via our website, Susan's Family, supporting your handwork experience, sharing the joy of life. Thank you all for watching. See you in the next episode.